Everybody, this is Jim Ingersoll, and I'm hanging out with a good friend of mine from beautiful Texas, Eddie Speed. And we've got an amazing time for you today. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to probably want to watch this twice. I encourage you to hit the share button, the like button, leave me your comments. Let me know what you think, because today we're going to talk about some really creative ways to do real estate deals. Eddie, you've been doing this a really long time, since the 1980s.
Yeah.
So you've been through all kinds of market cycles. You've done thousands and thousands of deals. Are you still staying busy these days?
Jim, I've been busier in the last few months than I've been in last that I can remember when. Apparently, everybody's figured out that they want to learn something about creative financing now.
Well, it is good. You know, I was thinking about it earlier. I've done a good amount of it. We talked a little bit about it last week, but you know, I've done it on, I remember back, I was thinking after we talked about the deals I've done, but I did a 32 unit apartment complex with it.
Yeah.
I did a whole series, all from a package of duplexes, quad. I did a medical building from a doctor. I've done little bungalows. So I've done single family homes, duplexes, quads, medical building, I think a parking lot once, and all the way up to a 32 unit apartment complex. It's good. It solves problems, doesn't it?
You know, really, at the core of it, it doesn't matter what asset class it is. Like people think of it in terms of, I've done a lot of land stuff, as you know.
Yeah.
And bought a lot of country land, broke it up, bought most of it on some kind of creative terms in some way, shape, or form. I solved a creative problem for a seller literally today because we're trying to get ready to close, and they've discovered they have a tax problem. And so we can pay part of the money now and part of the money next year, and probably get it to where they pay almost literally no capital gains tax, because you pay the money, you pay for it when you get it. You will not pay for it when you sell it if you carry some terms. And that's not really a great long-term financeable deal, but it made, you know, literally, because they're taking the money in two chunks, one year and one the next, it's now pulling down the family. There's 5 members. So if they got $1 million capital gain, and they're going to pay almost zero capital gains tax, because they're dividing over 5
So let's start there, because now, man, you keep bringing back more and more deals I've done, and I've had really good luck. I live in Virginia, but I've been doing a lot of seller financing also in Florida. And the first one I did there was another 20 units of apartments that I completely forgot about. It was just 2 years ago. But the guy had owned it a long time, and he had some medical issues, and he relocated to Virginia, and somebody saw that I was buying, and they called me with this referral, and it turned out to be a really good deal. But it was the same thing. He was worried about capital gains. Everyone knows taxes are going to go up. So let's start there, because if you can educate people on how to save money on taxes, then it makes these deals a little bit easier. And there's a lot of listen, so when you stack motivations, start with a burned out landlord who's just come through COVID. They've been getting all of the rent relief, and now that's done. And they're like, oh my gosh, now I no longer get rent relief. I've got, you know, bad tenants in place, but I can't sell because I can't afford the taxes. Those are like stacked motivations, I call them, and really good primers for this type of financing.
Yeah, there's all kind of reasons to seller finance, but this is a good place to start. So if you have somebody that you're buying a property from, and they're going to get taxed on their profit, right? Now, that's not true on an individual selling their homestead necessarily, but it's true with every investor. And it doesn't matter what kind of real estate it is, right? It doesn't matter at all. You know, it can be anything, any size. You know, this is a piece of land. The story that I'm telling you about is a piece of land. Okay, it's a ranch. I'm doing it with our friend Mr. Fenolio, right? And so it's a piece of land, and its sellers are 5 family members.
Wow.
So they get taxed on capital gains every year. Okay. So if they sell this and stretch out when they get the money. They get to stretch out when the capital gains is triggered, because you pay on installment sales. You pay when you get the money, not when you sell it, right? And so the first so many dollars of capital gains is free every year. It's like income tax. You don't pay capital gains on $1 of profit. You pay after you've collected a certain amount of money. So if the IRS says you're a joint filer, you have $80,800 in capital gains that's free before you start getting taxed. Now, I'm not giving tax advice, but I've paid for it. You got what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm 100% sure I'm right, but I'm going to say verify it with your own information. So what this allows somebody to do is, if you take this money over time, you may go for every year and never earn enough capital gains to trigger the taxing part. So all of a sudden, could you sell a property, with a big gain in it with seller financing and avoid paying capital gains tax? And the answer is absolutely.
My wheels are already turning. All right. So that's one case that I love, and I've used it and I've done it. And I think it's amazing. It's just a matter of understanding why somebody sells, what their fears are, and then really solving those problems. And taxes with landlord sellers is a huge one. I like aging landlords that are getting tired out.
That's our most common.
Yeah,
that's our most common candidate that our team chases as far as note school people. So let's go back a little bit.
All right.
Like, how did I get here? Like, what led me to this road? Most people in this business, Jim, start out somewhat like you did. You were an engineer. You became a part-time investor. You are an excellent rehabber because it fits your engineer organization, your engineer brain, your everything about that, right? You're a good process manager. So I started out, I was 20 years old, and my wife Martha, and her dad was he was a rock star in this business in 1980. He was actually a retired fireman. And he was an old real estate investor, had trailer parks and rent houses and owner finance some stuff. And the business came along and interest rates got really high and people were forced to seller finance. They had to seller finance because traditional mortgages weren't affordable. So I came along with him and he taught me how to buy owner finance notes. And I did that. And I have still done that. And I bought 50,000 of those. Right. So a lot over the years. But how I did so much business was as the 80s progressed and I got a little more maturity and a little more understanding, I met a guy named Ken D'Angelo. In the 80s, Ken D'Angelo, of course, is the man that founded Homevestors. Now, sadly, Ken D'Angelo died 20 years ago. So he's not the Homevestors that you may know today, but he was the brainchild of it. That guy was the smartest real estate investor I have yet met to date. He really, really got it because he put house buying in a can. And so I was his note guy. I bought notes from he and his brother. And then when he formed Homevestors, he knew that over a long period of time, real estate investors without creative financing couldn't survive. Now, let's be honest about it. People didn't need very much creative financing 2 years ago. Money was cheap and money was fairly loose, right? And so you don't need that. You're not forced to figure it out. All of a sudden, we've had double interest rates in a year and mortgage underwriting has gotten really tight.
Yes.
So not only is money expensive, but it's hard for a really good person necessarily to qualify for a mortgage today. So then we're in, like everything else in real estate, everything you do, Jim, somehow fills a void that mainstream real estate doesn't figure out. That's why you exist. You couldn't buy houses at a discount if a realtor could solve every problem for every real estate owner known to me. Is that right?
That's true. Yeah, and realtors don't love to work on cheap houses with problems and fixer-uppers and stuff. Anyways, they like to earn nice commission checks on $300,000 or $400,000 houses.
So along the way, over the last few years, how I did it was when I started with Homevestors, I really set up a blueprint of how to make seller financing. Now, I'm sure that on the internet, there'll be thousands of people that claim they did that, but I'm pretty sure I'm the first guy to do it.
I think so.
And that was around 1990. And what that allowed me to do is I could give a template to a real estate investor, and I did to the Homevestor franchisees, and I did to a lot of other real estate investors. Our old friend Mitch Stephen, I bought the first 500 notes he ever did, right? And so I really laid out, here's a formula. Here is how you make safe seller financing that will be good to you. And then all of a sudden people could do it because it was far easier for them to follow a formula than just to sort of make up stuff. And they didn't understand how to underwrite, or they didn't understand kind of like how the note industry looked at it. And so that's how I did the greatest volume, was I taught people how to create, essentially creative financing, and then they could exit and sell those notes. So then I started looking at it and said, well, how do you buy on creative terms? Now, you've been around the most creative people in the country on creative terms, and we have a ton of mutual friends.
We do.
I figured out one thing, though, Jim, I thought that kind of made me different. And that was this. I've been doing this 42 years. I'm convinced that I must have looked at least 200,000 or 300,000 notes. Wow. I mean, I bought 50,000, right? And so I couldn't find anybody else in the country that ever looked at so many deals, right? And the second thing is, I've talked to tens of thousands of people that seller financed, and they agreed to crazy stuff. And I started kind of a psychological experiment. I started trying to understand why they would agree to something so crazy. Because me, as a more sophisticated note buyer, it's what I'd done all day, every day, I couldn't imagine why they would do something that seemed so illogical to me, but it seemed so logical to them. So I started developing, how do you structure a deal that sellers almost 100% of the time will take it. But it's very advantageous for you if you're the one borrowing the money.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
I probably dropped 5 million pieces of mail to people that owned a note, owner financed. That's a lot. We've had tens of thousands of conversations. Did you know, Jim, that I'll bet you if I had 500 people call me that responded to one of our, mail outs, hey, you want to sell your note, maybe 1 in 500 would have a credit report on the person they loan money to. Literally, I'm not kidding. So I started understanding that when people would say, well, I don't know, the seller doesn't really want to owner finance because he's so worried about getting paid. And I'm like, well, if he's so worried about getting paid, how come nobody ever pulls a credit report? That'd be a good place to start, right? Or you're a landlord. You wouldn't dream of
Never
putting a tenant in a house without vetting the tenant
Nope.
deeply.
No.
But that's not how they think. So what I started realizing is there was a pattern to this, and if I could crack that code and then build a blueprint, then you didn't have to go talk to 10,000 notes of property sellers that carried a note to know what I had finally figured out.
Well, there's a lot there. So you've seen behind the curtain of a lot of deals, and and started to sort of crack that code to figure out what sellers will agree to and still solve their problem at the same time.
Most of the time, the tax angle is a really good angle. There's no question. In fact, we call it, Jim, the strategy we were talking about a while ago, we actually call that a tax strategy offer. That's what we tell the seller. And when you lean in and say this property might qualify for a tax strategy offer program, they don't run you out the door. Let me just tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
So it's a pretty good way to keep your seat. So there's a few things we've really kind of learned. The first thing I've learned is every deal starts out with just asking good filtering questions. And so people say, filtering questions, what does that mean? And so here's how we start out and explain it.
Okay.
The big question is, how big is the wolf at their door? Right? If the wolf is so big at their door that whatever you pay them for the property, 100% of that money has to go to solve a problem, then they're not a candidate to carry terms.
Yeah.
But if the wolf isn't so big, maybe he's not the oldest wolf in the woods, or maybe he's a pup, or maybe he's even a rabbit and there's no wolf at the door at all. Then all of a sudden you start really realizing, okay, there's some paths, there's some decision tree paths I could go down depending on what their story is and that relates to the property, what they owe, what it takes to fix it up, what is their immediate cash needs, and all that stuff. Then all of a sudden you start saying, because when do people decide creative financing really is a value? Usually when they're at an impasse on price, right? Because the whole point in creative financing is you're buying a property and paying today's price, but paying with way tomorrow's dollars. That's the concept, right?
Yeah, and that's why like so many wholesalers and people out there trying to buy houses at a discount end up with their tail between their legs running back to their car without a signed contract.
That's it.
Because the only discussion they can have is price. And when you flip the script and say, all right, I'm going to give you your price, and this is how that works, a whole new discussion is created, in my opinion.
Well, it's our mutual friend Jerry Green calls it programs, right? You might call it a path. All it simply means is if you're doing marketing and deals are coming in the door, you have various ways that a deal could fit in instead of just doing one thing. Because the truth of the matter is, this time last year when hedge funds were paying 110% of value, you didn't have to be super smart. Let's just be honest about it. You didn't have to be super smart to be a house buyer.
No.
Right? And you didn't have to buy at a very good deep discount because you were overselling to somebody because they had crazy money. Now all of a sudden that world's all disappeared and you're having to go negotiate and get a seller to take a much deeper discount. And apparently these sellers are reading, a 6-month-old Wall Street Journal and they don't know there's a problem yet. Am I right?
100%.
So this is creative financing. Let me say, I said this to a really seasoned guy a day or two ago, and I think you'll agree with this. In today's market, the only savvy real estate investor that wouldn't be using creative financing is the one who doesn't know how.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of them. They think it's too hard, or they think they need a big acquisitions team, or they don't think it's scalable, or they've only been taught one way, which is here's my price, here's my formula, my simple mathematical formula, and that's all there is. And they turn around and they leave.
Yeah. Well, I understand, Jim, you and I've been doing this a very long time. And so we can have a super in-depth conversation, very intricate about all these ways you structure deals. And if you hadn't gone down the roads that we've been down, then somebody would go, oh my goodness, that's confusing. So what I figured out was, and the guy that runs my marketing is a former student of yours, loves you to death, Max, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we figured out was that we just needed to let Eddie build templates that we know that if you present it this way and you structure it this way, the sellers are the most likely to do it. And it's like crazy good for you if you're the guy borrowing the money. So you don't have to like be a calculator whiz anymore because we've already kind of done that. That's really how you make it simple.
You've made it easy. I'm glad you talked about clarity too, because a confused mind always says no. And I think if you can come up with an offer that's creative, but you're able to communicate it in a really crystal clear manner, they're more likely to say yes.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
So a lot of people say, how in the world do you bring this up to a seller? Right? How do you even bring it up? So let me give you kind of a litmus test.
Okay.
They have to immediately understand the concept. It has to be familiar to them. It has to sound smart. It has to sound like it's a good decision for them, right?
Of course.
And it needs to be in a way that they can see why that it's necessary. So those are really three components. Like they need to immediately identify with it. It needs to seem smart, and it needs to be logical to them. Right? It doesn't need to seem trickery or something that's, like I don't even know how that would work. So what we did was we picked something that virtually everybody with a driver's license understands. An industry that does this so much that literally if you've ever watched TV, you know what we're talking about. And that is who? The furniture industry. So furniture stores carry terms.
Every time.
And so everybody can relate to that. And Jim, do you think the furniture company is losing money?
I'm thinking not.
Okay, so it sounds like a smart decision for them, right? And you can say that. The furniture company's not losing money because they're smart, and you can make a smart decision like that as well. So that's what, now it's logical. That's what, that's why I can pay you the price, is because you're waiting for part of the money. And so all of a sudden it goes from, I don't know, or I'm not really sure, to somebody, now they're calling their sister in the car as they're leaving saying, hey, I think I've got a way to get my property sold and hold out for the price I was wanting.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's from the customer perspective. There's a lot of ways to really lay that out with a customer. And we've developed, as we said, some decision tree paths. Like most people think, well, they'd have to have a free and clear property to owner finance it. I would say in the next 3 years that 75% of seller financing will be a second lane, maybe a third.
I mean, that's a big opportunity. And I do think the market has shifted already. And I do agree that we need more solutions. Real estate investors right now need more tools in that toolbox than a cash offer, because they're walking away from deals they shouldn't be walking away from. What's the best fit for an investor to sort of make this leap, this transition, I guess would be a better call?
Well, everything starts out with a learning path, right? Yeah. What we figured out is this. I love doing this kind of an interview. I knew this would be fun, and so you and I are talking about something that we've done for a long time, but I don't think we're talking about in a very complex way. We're talking about how literally anybody in the business can apply this to their business. So we built a masterclass.
Okay.
It's a couple of hours. And so from there, then you have a chance, because obviously we have a screen and we can use a whiteboard and have some animation, and you can kind of see how it forms together. And so that's really a good place to start. Somebody that wants to come to note school down the road is great. We'd love to. But literally, Jim, I don't care who you would be. The first thing I would say is just go watch the masterclass and get a sense of how this works. Right? You wouldn't even know if note school's a fit for you until you tried, until you got to see some examples. And so that's a good way that we've learned. It's a virtual way to do it. You know, I would tell somebody, if you're going to watch the masterclass, do yourself a favor. Turn your phone off and turn the world off for a little bit. You're not going to get this and try to multitask 6 other things and watch this. But if you do, let me say this, that we know we're 100% certain as to where we think the real estate investor market is. I'm involved, as you know, in several high volume masterminds. I'm around probably the top 500 house buyers. I'm around 80% of them on a regular basis. And we know that the market needs this. So if you're not a big operator, you know, you got the same problems as the big operators, right? And that is, you need to close more deals. That's what this is about, is how to go operate and function in a market that, as we said, any active real estate investor should be using creative financing in today's environment. And that doesn't mean on every deal, of course. That just means when it's appropriate. But they should be applying this, and the only reason they wouldn't is they just didn't know how to do it yet.
Well, tell me a little bit more about the masterclass. I think I want to attend. So let's go through it. How long does it take?
The masterclass is where we basically unfold what you can accomplish. Like, why would you do this? And so we unfold that. Then we unfold, like, okay, what's a deal look like? We talk about these decision tree paths and we show people what that looks like. And then we go take real case studies and we kind of lay them up against those paths and say, which path did this go down and how did you figure that out? In other words, we go mechanically, you know how it works, Jim. The first thing you got to go do is you got to figure out, you know, if you bought it, how would you get rid of it? Would you sell it on a wrap note? Would you do a lease option? Would you just rent it? Or you could even flip it with the financing in place. I mean, there's all kind of choices. And then you back into, you know, how big is the wolf at their door and can they afford to do it? And so we show that within the case study so people start getting a real sense of it's not just a concept, it's actually you're applying it. And so then at the end, you know, then we're just like, there you go. And we give some information. If somebody wants to stay on there and learn about how to, you know, go down the road with us a little further in classes, we show them how we can do it. And it's very non-threatening, believe me. And it's just how it works.
How long is the master class typically?
It's about 2 hours.
Okay. And you do it online?
Yeah, we do it online. There's a registration process.
Yep. I'll include that.
And you do it online, and we you know, it's just it's a very effective way for somebody pretty quickly to figure out whether I like this or maybe they don't like it. Most people do, but there could be somebody that didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, what an incredible offer. So what a great way to, I mean, for decades now, Eddie, you have impacted real estate. And here you're doing it all over again in a new, innovative way. I love it. I mean, you've impacted thousands of us real estate investors over the years.
Well, I got blessed. I fell into something a long time ago that I loved.
Yeah.
And I just feel lucky to have done that. I have a passion for it. Everybody knows me that knows that. I think because of the market, I think I've kind of trained for this party a really long time, and I think I can have an impact. But I can have the biggest impact, Jim, when I get support of people like you. So thank you for that, really. Wow.
What a great opportunity for investors. I hope everyone clicks through that registration link and it's free. The master class, right?
And we charge.
Who doesn't want free training?
We do charge for it, but I'm making it. I'm giving your folks a special line.
And I mean, we're all deal makers. We all want a deal, so that is a deal you cannot pass up. I encourage everyone to take it because, Eddie, you're one of the most high integrity people I've met, and you've impacted literally thousands of us real estate investors, including me. I've had the pleasure of meeting you and your wonderful wife. And so I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you. We're all very grateful for that. And we're grateful for this new training session that you've put up. I'm going to sign up and take it as well. So I encourage everybody to just go do that.
I think it'll be helpful, and I think the market is going to be kind to those that know how to operate in it.
I do too. And what a perfect timing in today's market, with rates doubled in a year and inflation's not going away, regardless of what Jerome Powell may try to lead us to believe. There's just going to be more chaos and disruption coming, and people need these solutions. It's the perfect environment for a deal maker. And if you can learn to structure deals easily and solve problems, you're gonna be able to get everything that you ever need. So go out there and make your deals, but really focus on solving the problems for people is what I love to do.
That's it.
Any final word here, Eddie, for everybody?
Don't be scared of this.
That's easy.
I started at 20 years old when I started doing this. I didn't have any real estate background. So I'm just saying, if this dumb old boy can do it, don't let it intimidate you.
I'm glad you said that. And when I started down this path, it was when I was wholesaling. And when I mentioned that 32 unit apartment complex at the beginning, that was a wholesale deal. And what I did is I bought it with, I think it was around 6% interest and a 5% down payment. And I wrapped it to a friend of mine who was a real estate investor at like 9% with a 10% down payment. And it was a win-win. It was completely vacant. It would have been not the right property for me to buy and hold myself. But he went on and he refied it. He cashed me out. And just getting my feet wet on that wholesale deal that turned into a seller finance and wrap really set the path forward for a lot more deals.
Yeah.
So I love it.
It is an incredible tool, and I'm really excited that your guys are going to be a part of that. And we will look forward to seeing you in the class, as well as hopefully a lot of your audience.
All right. Thanks again, Eddie. And man, we're also grateful for you guys, and really appreciate your spending this time with me today. Thank you very much.